On March 15th, 2012, Derek Lueking, 24 years old, never showed up for work. When Derek's roommate and family checked his internet search history, they discovered that he had been doing research on the Great Smoky Mountains and that he had made a motel reservation at the Microtel Inn and Suites in Cherokee, North Carolina. The security footage at this hotel showed Derek leaving the hotel at 4 a.m. In the hotel room, they found a Bible on the bed and a liquor bottle on the floor. The surveillance footage here was the last anyone had ever seen of Derek Lueking. On March 17th, he was believed to be wearing a gray hooded sweatshirt, dark track pants with a white stripe down the sides, dark sneakers, and a watch. He may also have had camouflage rain gear and a black day pack. At the time he went missing, Derek had brown hair, hazel eyes, and a short beard. He may also have worn eyeglasses, and he had a tattoo of Japanese characters on his upper left chest. Before we take you on the same route the family took to go find Derek, we're going to go back in history a little bit and show you all the places Derek visited before arriving here the day before he disappeared. According to a letter Derek's father released to the press, Derek had actually gone missing on March 14th, several days before he arrived at this hotel. That day, Derek visited Bass Pro Shops, Knife Works, and Coleman's. These locations, likely where he stopped on his way to Motel 6, was his first stop, where he would purchase over $1,000 in camping supplies, including a pack axe, compass, pocket knife and sharpener, a lamp, tent, sleeping bag, and much more. That evening on the 14th, he stayed at Motel 6 in Gatlinburg. This was his first night in the Smoky Mountains, 3 days before he would make the decision to drive up into the mountains. There's no telling what he was thinking or planning while he was here. The next day on the 15th, Derek spent his second night in the Smoky Mountains at the Smoke Mount campground, which is right down that road. It doesn't make any sense because the weather was beautiful. He had no reason, if his plan was to escape into the mountains. It was a beautiful day. For some reason, he decided not to do that. He spent his second night in a campground, and we know that the next day he continued on. Was he easing his way into it? Since he bought all that survival gear on his way here, we know he didn't get the idea to go into the woods from someone else. He was planning to go into the woods. He bought the camping gear. For some reason, he kept staying one night after another. First a hotel in Gatlinburg. The second day, the Smoke Mount campground. It doesn't make any sense. Again, either he was not sure if he wanted to go into the woods, maybe he wasn't sure if he wanted to carry out with his plan, or he was building up the courage and building up his way into it. Psychologically, it seems like that's the case. Ultimately, he had a plan to use all of that gear at some point. Finally, on March 16th, Derek arrived at the Microtel Inn in Cherokee, his last night sleeping on a soft bed, before he would finally head out into the wild. The next morning, when families saw him leave the Microtel Hotel alone at 4 a.m. that same morning, they frantically started searching throughout the mountainside. The family went straight for the mountains, which from Microtel means following Route 441 through Cherokee, passing Mountain Farm Museum, and heading up straight into the hills by route of Newfound Gap Road. At 8:30 a.m. on March 17th, 2012, the family arrived here at the Newfound Gap parking lot. By pure luck, they found his white Ford Escape. Inside the abandoned Ford, the family found new survival gear, including a pack axe, compass, pocket knife and sharpener, a lamp, tent, sleeping bag, 100 feet of parachute cord, a survival belt with a multi-tool, a flashlight, and a fire starter rod. Now, he even had a military survival manual ready to go, so one could be forgiven for thinking that he was definitely planning on escaping into the wilderness. There are trails on all sides of this parking lot that go into the wilderness. He could have just walked off trail as well. At the time of his disappearance, there was a very popular film, Into the Wild, that featured Chris McCandless, who had tossed off all his earthly belongings, including his wallet, his money, and disappeared into the wilderness of Alaska. It could be possible that Derek had taken inspiration from that film. He was tired of his life. He didn't like his job, according to his father's letter. And it could be possible that he wanted to do the same thing. He wanted to come here to the Newfound Gap parking area, toss off his earthly belongings. He left his wallet and his money. He left his sleeping bag and his tent. And maybe he just decided to walk off into the wilderness and do the same thing that Chris McCandless did, live off the land. Derek's father had even written that Derek had started drinking and smoking, which was not like him. Again, he was not satisfied with his job. He didn't like his job, and he was just unhappy. He was uncharacteristically unhappy with his life, and so it could be possible that he took inspiration from that film and decided that he too would toss off all of his earthly belongings and walk into the wild of the Smoky Mountains. Now, the one thing that would disprove that theory is if he really did leave all of his survival gear in the car, which a lot of people have reported was the case. Did he leave all of his gear? Did he just decide to walk into the woods without anything, or did he get kidnapped? There's more to that piece of the story, and we'll get to that in just a little bit. About 60 people and 3 dog teams were deployed to search for Derek. These searchers were split into 14 teams and walked over 70 miles of trails around Newfound Gap parking area. They explored areas along and just off trail to look for clues of Derek's passage. Each time, they came to an impassable area Derek couldn't possibly have continued on through. According to Derek's father, rangers even rappelled down some high cliffs on March 29th and didn't find anything. Here's where things get really strange. In August of 2012, a backpack and a skull was discovered near this trail about 1 mile south of Sugarland's Visitor Center. The remains were not those of Derek, but of Michael Giovanni Cuccini, age 23, who had also gone missing almost in March, almost exactly around the time that Derek went missing. His friends actually found his car on March 20th, right where the parking area is for this trail. Friends had last seen Michael on March 18th, 2012. The day before that was the day that Derek had walked out of the Microtel Inn and disappeared into the Smoky Mountains himself. There are a few more clues that may help understand Derek's state of mind when he drove up to Newfound Gap on March 17th. The family has stated Derek was a big fan of the TV show Man vs. Wild, and in that show, the host Bear Grylls attempts to survive in the wilderness with very little gear. But according to the family, Derek was not an experienced outdoorsman. Derek also didn't leave all of his gear in the car. Reports that say he left everything in the car are incorrect. According to his father's letter to the press, they believe he did take a backpack, a waterproof watch, a Bear Grylls survival tool pack, which is a multi-tool, small flashlight, and a fire starter rod, a Gerber pickaxe, several pages of a survival manual, a knife sharpener, a compass, 100 feet of black parachute cord, a headlamp, a pocket knife, his iPad Touch, and some granola bars. They discovered 5 empty bags from Walmart with additional supplies, but they were never able to identify what those supplies were. He did not take his sleeping bag and tent, which would have been crucial to protect him from the elements and help avoid hypothermia. In addition to ongoing park searches, the family and friends gathered on March 24th and 25th to conduct a search, which included 60 people. Derek's father reported that the hikers who showed up hiked a total of 175 miles of trail, while others handed out 3,000 flyers to park visitors. That kind of massive search effort makes the idea of any additional ground search attempts feel futile. If Derek had decided to forgo his tent and sleeping bag and live directly off the land just like Bear Grylls, then the odds are good he intentionally pushed himself as far into the wilderness as he could go, far from any trail or any place hikers would venture. The fact that Michael Giovanni Cuccini had gone missing on almost exactly the same day as Derek, and his remains were found on the same road, this appears to have been a very unusual coincidence. In 2012, the National Park Service released a statement that while they couldn't determine the exact cause of death, Quote, evidence found at the scene indicates that Cucini had intentions of taking his own life and that foul play was not suspected. The fact that Derek did take a fair amount of survival gear with him indicates he did not have those same intentions. We believe that despite buying so much camping gear, Derek decided he wanted to be more like Bear Grylls and survive without the luxury of a sleeping bag or a tent. He brought the kind of gear Bear Grylls would have. He was probably planning to hunt and eat his own food, boil his own water, and carry on for the rest of his life within the massive wilderness of the Great Smoky Mountains. Here's the problem. Once you step off the trail in almost any wilderness area, it doesn't take much distance for you to lose sight of the trail. And before long, should you change your mind and want to go back home, you'll have no way of knowing how to get back, unless you're actively using your compass and keeping your bearings. Did Derek experience the same fate that Chris McCandless did? The protagonist of the novel Into the Wild, was Derek seeking escape from his life and wanting to live free in the wilderness of the Great Smoky Mountains? If so, what became of him? Did he fall off a steep ravine, get injured, with no way to return home? Did he at some point, after experiencing a few evenings of fall weather in the mountains, realize he wanted to go back home but didn't know how? Or was Derek successful? Did he walk into the unknown depths of the mountains, build himself a small cabin, and survive in the wild all of these years? Is he still out there? Unless this last theory is true and Derek eventually walks out of those woods as an older man, we may never know his fate. It's unlikely that hunters or hikers will stumble upon his remains that far out in the wilderness. We feel for Derek's family because without those answers, there's no real closure. And a loss of a loved one like this without closure is the worst thing a family can experience. The not knowing. Wherever he is, we hope that Derek is at peace and is happy. I hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the mystery of Derek Lueking's disappearance. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel if you'd like to hear more stories like this one. Until then, stay safe, and we'll see you next time.